We're going to dive into the story that has dominated the headlines. No, not the transit strike, the other one. The fact that the BC government has decided to wade into the e-cigarette debate. Health Minister Adrian Dix said yesterday that some manufacturers are using flavors and advertising to entice and normalize vaping for youth, introducing a new generation to very high levels of a very addictive drug. He said this is why we are bringing in the most comprehensive plan in the country and supporting young people to end this dangerous trend. But will that actually happen? Well, joining us now to talk about what this new legislation will look like on the ground and how difficult it might be from an enforcement angle is Brent Stafford. He's the founder of RegulatorWatch.com. Brent, nice to have you on our program. Good morning.
Good morning, John.
Thanks for joining us. From your position as the founder of RegulatorWatch.com, what do you make of these new regulations regarding vaping, and will they have the intended consequences?
Oh, that's definitely a big question, John. I mean, obviously, government believes that they can regulate people's behavior across every single, avenue. And I'm not too certain whether or not they're going to be very successful in this regard, because the one thing that government across the country, and we've been covering Health Canada too as well, and the Director General of the Tobacco Control Director at Health Canada sat down with our show 3 times over the last 2 years with regard to the federal vaping regulations. And what I can say is that never in this entire debate has there been a discussion about parents, a discussion about kids, and their responsibility around these products. And so if it's just about demonizing vaping and then creating regulations and tax structures and a whole series of new propaganda initiatives to demonize vaping, what you're going to end up having is a mess. You'll have more adults returning to smoking. You're going to have teens pressuring other teens to not vape. And I'm not certain whether or not it's actually going to, clamp down on the teen vaping like they're hoping.
I'm curious because of course the tobacco industry, and we're going to talk to somebody from Imperial Tobacco coming up in the next half hour. Their stance is all lily white. That, well, no, we created these next generation of products because we are trying to get adults to quit smoking, and this is a way that we can do that. Although the vaping products themselves are still highly addictive, and they will deny that they market to kids or want kids to use these, but that's the growing market is teenagers.
Yeah, you make a great point, and it's something that in our coverage, when we first started covering the vaping issue 4 years ago, we put to industry. And keep in mind, this was before Big Tobacco had really entered the marketplace. I think it's helpful for your listeners to know and understand that vaping is a consumer-led initiative that was built out of the frustration of not having good options to quit smoking after decades and decades of being told by public health that you really must quit. And I was a 2-pack-a-day smoker. I've been in the media for 30 years, and John, you know how many of us smoked. And the patches and gum and all that stuff, it didn't work. They just weren't an option. And vaping was created by consumers. The open systems market, as it is called, where you put your own e-juice in it and so forth, that turned into a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry worldwide before Big Tobacco really got their entrance into the marketplace. So there's a real schism inside the vaping industry all across the world that is between the original kind of vaping, which blows the big clouds, if you want to put it that way, and then these very tight pod-based systems that Big Tobacco or companies like Juul have brought into the market. And ever since we started covering this issue, I always press industry and said, regulators, the public, educators, public health, they don't believe you when you say that you're happy with just converting every single smoker over to vaping, because sooner or later you're a business and you're going to need new customers.
Yeah.
And where are those new customers going to come from? And so they're still struggling trying to figure out the answer to that question. And however, with Big Tobacco entering the market and with some innovation in product that they've had, which is obviously successful products like Juul, that's the ultimate question that's happening here, is that if this is a long-term business, where do the new customers come from?
Well, whose idea was it to dream up flavors like cotton candy and bubblegum and root beer? I mean, if you're a heavy-duty two-pack-a-day smoker, you're looking for nicotine. You're not looking for cotton candy and bubblegum. So who created that stuff?
Well, it's interesting. Well, obviously, that is the brilliance of what happened with the open systems, vaping marketplace. You have so many stories in British Columbia, some very successful companies, doing $28 million, $40 million a year in e-juice and been around since 2012, employing hundreds of people. And the thing is that flavors are actually the thing that regular vapors, adult vapors, absolutely need and love for it to be successful. So it's all the different variations of flavors that appeal to you as your personality, your taste, and so forth, that do mask over the nicotine. Just every single complaint that's made about vaping when it comes to the attractiveness to youth has been, for the last 7 to 8 years, been all the things that makes vaping attractive to adults. And so adults feel like they're being thrown under the bus in the effort to protect children. And it's adults who are smoking. It's the adults who are dying. 220,000 Canadians a year are getting sick with smoking-related diseases, and many, many of those die. And so vaping has been a significant, overwhelming success when it comes to quitting. I mean, Health Canada spent 5 years reviewing the evidence on vaping. The Justin Trudeau's led federal Liberal government implemented the legislation that legalized vaping. It went through Parliament, went through Senate, all the science went through it. So I think people need to understand that there's a very strong, progressive, puritanical, ideological motivation that's abstinence only that's driving so much of this discussion. It's really hard for the vaping industry to kind of combat that because, of course, the vaping industry is, the little brother of big tobacco.
Well, Canadian study, Canadian teens vaping has jumped 74% in 1 year.
Right.
Clearly, this is not the way that, I don't think anybody wants it to go. If indeed the whole idea is to get adults to back off on smoking cigarettes, how does allowing this to get into the hands of teenagers, products that are still addictive if they contain nicotine, how is that a positive thing?
So let me remove the first part of the last part, which is a moral question, and I'll certainly handle that. So the study that you're talking about, the 74%, that was done by Dr. David Hammond from the University of Waterloo. Now we've covered this study to a huge extreme because right after Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the FDA commissioner from the U.S., in September of 2018, issued the big announcement that there was an epidemic of teen vaping in the United States, the U.S. still did not have their data in when they made that announcement at all as well. And by the time end of October, early November happened of that same fall, Dr. Hammond had already released and leaked the results of this study that had not yet been published or peer-reviewed. And that went to Health Canada and was used to develop the two regulatory consultation processes that were launched in February of this year to crack everything open. That same data was used to power every single global news and CBC story across the country, heralding that there was an epidemic of teen vaping in Canada. I want everybody to know that data had not been peer-reviewed or released until June. And so all of the regulatory consultations were closed and everything else. By the time that data came out, and when Professor Lalonde at the University of Victoria, Dr. Mark Tyndall, the former executive director of the BC Centers for Disease Control, when they reviewed the data. There are a lot of problems with it. There was only 2,000 students that were involved in that study in Canada, whereas Health Canada has 150,000 in their study. Health Canada's data came out in June. It showed less than 1% of teens smoking in Canada. The statistic is so small that it's not even statistically reliable. So there was a lot of problems. And then the last thing I should mention is that every single stat that you hear on vaping, every single one, whether it's in Canada or the U.S., that stat is always based on the 30-day use. So it includes one kid at a party trying an e-cigarette vaping once.
All right, Brent, listen, I got to leave it there because I'm up against the clock. Appreciate your insight on this. Brent Stafford, founder of RegulatorWatch.com. When we come, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the other major story from the last 24 hours, re-government, and that is a big crackdown on vaping. I guess the question is this going to be enough to keep young people away from vaping?
So, this is a depressing story, and I have a question for us as a society. When they started marketing cotton candy flavored e-cigarettes and vaping solution and root beer flavored and strawberry shortcake, for God's sake, what did we think the cigarette and the manufacturing companies were up to? Did we not go, wait a minute, who are they targeting this at? You know, if you've been a smoker all your life and you're trying to quit, I don't think cotton candy flavored e-cigarettes are going to get you to give up. I don't even think that's what you're looking for. So the companies have, in the insidious way the tobacco companies have been operating for 100 years, have been targeting young people. They've been loading these things up with nicotine. They've been running the advertising and the flavors at them. The medical health officers tell us, and you hear this from the schools, what happens at the schools is they order the stuff online. You can't buy it easily. You can order it online. You get it delivered to your house. And then a little competition goes on in the school, John, where, have you tried the cotton candy yet? No, I haven't yet, but here's root beer. Why don't you try that, right? And you're getting a new generation of addicts, which is exactly what the tobacco companies want.
Yeah.
You hear them say, oh, no, we don't want young people. Oh, no, we should crack down. BS. Why are you even marketing these flavors? Who the hell are you going out to find? And why are the ads? And Hollywood? Why are all these cool Hollywood actors who are always trying to save the world allowing pictures to go out of themselves smoking e-cigarettes, right? Like, we allow this to happen collectively as a society. The BC government deserves credit for bringing in some very tough regulations yesterday and announcing regulations. They don't take effect till next spring. They're going to allow some consultation. They're bringing in some taxes. Those take effect on January the 1st. Adrian Dix was good yesterday on this, John. He said, collectively, we got it wrong as governments. He's not pointing fingers at anybody, So BC's rising to the occasion. I guess the question that you asked me off the top, is this going to be enough? Are we so far behind the curve on what we allowed to happen here that it's going to take a generation to reverse the damage caused here? It's an open question.
I would give that rant an A+, and on that basis, I wish you a very, very good weekend.
Yeah, you too, John. Thanks very much.
Vaughn Palmer from the Vancouver Sun and thesun.com, and he is not wrong.